I have a thought. I just lost it. Wait, hold on. I have a way in. I was going to say, so the title of this episode is things that we don't want to do anymore. And Paul and I are in our 50s. I mean, technically, I am 50. Paul's in his 50s.
I'm in my 50s.
Yes.
In my 50s.
But we are both men who have gone through, our own versions of rebirth. And we've come to the point in our lives where there are some things that we don't want to negotiate. And there are some things that we are no longer interested in doing. So that's what this episode's about. Oh, I was going to say, so we have all this, we have Instagram Live going. I've got like a fancy camera. That's a plug-in webcam thing. I have microphones, and then of course the podcasting platform, and then a light and all this shit. And it reminds me of the two dudes with the bras on their heads in the 80s making the Weird Science. Doesn't it? Like, also we're in my garage.
Yeah.
And I kind of like it. So Weird Science and the old Christian Slater movie where he Pump Up the Volume.
Yeah.
Where he's broadcasting a radio show from his living room. Weird Science being like the nerds with the bras and trying to create the perfect woman. I feel like when I'm in here, like that's the thing I'm doing.
There is a mad scientist vibe.
Yes. And I love that it's very it's not, I mean, I guess it's a studio, but look, it's makeshift, it's, I feel like it's, like E.T. with aluminum on his head, like
No, but this is where content today is being created. It's not, 20 miles away in Hollywood. This is the stuff that's being seen all over the world.
Living rooms, garages,
mobile devices,
backyards, different devices.
It's not theaters and TVs anymore. It's this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So Paul is a rock star coach. He specializes in shame. We collided, I would say, a year ago, 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And of course, we're now friends. And he helps me run the Miserable Fucks retreats, which has been amazing. He has his own practice and he's doing a lot of things. He was just telling me a story about Costa Rica. I just got back from Costa Rica. And you could just do broad strokes. But that led me to... Because he said, okay, I'm not doing this shit anymore, right? So that led me to the title and the topic of today's episode. But broad strokes about Costa Rica.
Yeah, I had to go down, help a friend out, literally get a boat from one side of the country to the other. And then it ended with me being able to stay in an 11,000 square foot palatial estate with an infinity pool and all that stuff. But I used to live in Maui, used to live on the North Shore in the jungle. And so here I was back in the jungle. And my very first morning on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica, and walking through the jungle just for myself, I was like, okay, there's a heliconia, there's a ginger, there's a fern, there's this. And I hated it. I couldn't sleep well, the humidity. Mm-hmm. And then as the trip went on, backpack, running here, running there, doing this, driving all over the place, I realized I didn't, like I said, I'm done traveling like Jason Bourne. I used to love it. Give me a backpack and give me a red eye and I'm out of here. Now I'm like, fuck it.
Well, I was thinking like for, say a 20, maybe even a 30-year-old, that adventure, Costa Rica house with a helipad, running and doing all these things, jungle. It just sounds like you said, like Jason Bourne. It sounds very adventurous and exciting. But for you and where you're at in your life, and also for me, because to me, all I feel is anxiety when you tell me the story. One of the things that we don't want to do anymore.
It isn't. And the whole time I was doing it, all I'm like, I would much rather be in a 1-bedroom Airbnb in Vienna, getting ready to meet friends, have a good meal, and go look at some art. That's all. But I mean, I walk through a national park and I'm like, okay, there's a sloth, there's a monkey, there's an iguana, check. And all I wanted to do was be around art, be around friends. And it wasn't that I was physically incapable. It wasn't like my age was catching up to me. I was rocking this whole thing.
Paul's in great shape.
But it was just, it really was astounding to see how much my likes had changed and how much I had changed in an environment I used to thrive in.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather do this. I would hear that lisp. I would rather do this, coffee and tea, a conversation, broadcasting this this out of my garage than go to Bali for a week or do anything kind of fancy. And I just feel like I've become a creature of comfort, and also I think I have the ability now to seek nectar in more of the mundane, and that's been a game changer for me.
Yeah, and I noticed a little bit of, I don't want to bring this to inside baseball for me, but there's a little bit of shame. It's like, why don't I embrace this anymore? Why am I, I'm getting older. Oh, I have different likes.
Right.
Oh, I'm slowing down. And you really, you buck that. And
well, we're also not two people who are going to be at the park playing chess as we get older.
No.
Right.
No.
Right.
No, there's going to be a happy medium in there. But yeah, it was a really stark contrast.
Speaking of shame, what led you to that topic? If you want to, Paul's been on my podcast before, but he has a really powerful story. But what led you to shame and then helping people work through their shame?
It was, somebody asked me what type of coach that I wanted to be. One of the things that you are obsessed with as you're learning to become a coach and learning to do it properly is staying within the parameters of ICF and all your teachings and everything, and then picking a niche. And I really didn't have a niche, but then somebody allowed me to reframe it. And it's like, okay, who do you want to coach? And then that's where the whole Smart, Funny, Tortured brand that I have came out of it. And then is like, what do I know? I've lived with shame for 35 years, shame with my sexual identity, shame about my personality, intellect, all these things that I have gotten to the other side. I don't know the way out, but I know a way out. And I looked at, who do I want to coach, and who would I look for in a coach, or who would I look to as within a coach? And so that's how I came to, I know shame.
So shame in men, I think, very common.
Yeah.
Most men not exploring, not healing, dissolving shame, but more suppressing, right?
Yeah.
So for you, let's start with your definition. What's your definition of shame?
Shame, as I say, shame is the shitty little henchman of trauma. It's like trauma has come in, done its damage, and left town, and left this Vichy government in place to run your life.
Yeah.
It is a byproduct that you learn to live with that eventually causes long-term damage, both physically, mentally, and emotionally.
How did shame hijack you in your life, quality of life, your relationship with self, and and not so much now, but when you were in it, in the trenches?
Never being authentic. As you say, your great line is trading, truth for membership.
Yes.
Conformity. Self-loathing.
Yeah. Self-loathing,
that is another thing. I have a really dark line that I didn't realize how much it resonated with men. I say that, women die and men just break because we have nowhere to go with our shame, nowhere to go with vulnerability, nowhere to go. We're told, hey, be vulnerable, be this, be open. But there's not that many avenues for true expression. And a lot of men don't even know how to express.
When was your breaking moment for you? And maybe you we have many, but what was the big moment where you're like, okay, there's either forward or it's over. There is no reverse or redo.
It was 2017, and unfortunately, I was in crisis, and I was standing on the edge of a parking structure in Vegas. That one was financial shame. I had not executed on the archetype of being a provider for my family and my wife. I had, in both and also in business, somebody that I wanted to be, I did not become. So I was just like, all right, fine, I'm checking out. I have not checked any of the boxes.
When I was in my 30s, married, struggling screenwriter in Hollywood, and I wasn't bringing in income, I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of shame because my definition of man was to be a provider, and she was doing well and thriving, and I was the husband with dishwashing gloves, picking up the dog shit and trying to do everything I could, but I didn't make any money, and because of that, I remember I had a lot of shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is, I just think about, and I actually spoke to Vanessa about this. I said, look, there's a song that activated me that I felt was so harmful, and it was Sheryl Crow, "Are You Strong Enough to Be My Man?"
Oh,
And I hear that song, and I'm like, well,
right.
I'm not strong enough to be your man.
Yeah.
I obviously haven't done these things to be deserving of you, and then it just begins to metastasize.
Wait, do you think so? Like looking back, do you think is that a fair question? Are you strong enough to be my man? Or I don't know. Like, how did you interpret that?
It's really binary.
Yeah.
It's like, are you strong enough? Well, apparently you're not. You're not bringing home the bacon.
Okay,
you're not,
right. If
you're
it's
not
tied
this.
to
You're not this.
right. And
So apparently you're not. So moving on, and then the self-worth, and then you start, as I did, put it in a metaphorical way, is I was sliding down a hillside grabbing at branches. Then the desperation comes. Then the big swings and the recklessness come in, and the self-medication and all the other things. It really, and as I've coached in the past, and I've had the opportunity and the privilege, to hold space in the retreats with you and everything, the commonality of suffering in that regard is profound. It's not like, oh, there's 27 different types of shame and how people are processing it. No, there's 1, 2, or 3 that you can slot into, and then it spider webs like a windshield crack after that. But financial, sexual, it all can be, that's where the conversation can start.
Yes, and I overlap with that financial shame, sexual shame early on for me because she was Christian and very had the very kind of solid definitions about sex and sexuality. I was a little more fluid, and I thought she was right and I was wrong or defective, so there was shame there. But going back to Sheryl Crow's question in her song, I actually think it's loaded. So, are you strong enough to be my man? There's a couple things that I have a problem with. The word strength, right? Because we tend to think strong means to be the breadwinner. Strong means, physical capabilities. I would like the reframe to be, are you honest enough to be my man? But even the my piece, I don't like the possession piece.
Yeah. It's, can it be changed? Are you, will you join me in being, being my man? If there's a collaborative angle in it, it's essentially this this gladiatorial perspective. It's like, are you stronger than that guy or that guy?
Yeah, that question sets us up for shame in a way that basically prove yourself by being strong, and then of course, and this is generally speaking, as men, we're really great at proving ourselves, right? To the point where we break ourselves, to the point where we suppress or ignore our needs and who we are. There's a huge disconnect there, and so. Are you strong enough to be my man? And when I heard that in the 90s, I didn't have a problem with that lyric. I mean, some would say it's romantic, but today, and looking back, what a loaded question.
It is. And I mean, you can really go down the rabbit hole and go, God, does that perpetuate the patriarchy?
Sure, of course. Of course.
It's like, is a song by a woman about romance perpetuating patriarchal archetypes?
You know what I love about what you just said? Because it's so subtle, and you would never think that one lyric from a Sheryl Crow song is, a brick that's laid to perpetuate.
Fucked me up for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and the ability to finally be able to talk about it with, like I did with Vanessa, was freeing. It was cathartic. It was like, wait, I have this thing that brings me down. Can I discuss it? And just the ability to discuss it almost academically was so refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's another thing that you don't want to do anymore? So real quick, Paul, kids are almost out of the home, right? Kids are high school, kind of prepping for possible college kind of thing. and you have a lot of freedom now. I'm just at the beginning of that tunnel. Mine's only 3.5. And switching careers, because you used to run giant festivals. Now you're coaching and playing with a lot of things like AI. And we'll talk about his latest project. With this freedom now and a blank canvas, and your mission now to help other people, what do you not want to do anymore? It could be anything. It doesn't just have to be in your career world, but just in life.
You know, it sounds like a cop-out, but the first thing that came to mind was conforming.
Yeah.
Was, you know, that's usually reserved for people even later on in their lives who just are like, I'm done. You know, I'm gonna wear a purple hat. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be an eccentric older person and just embrace it. I don't want to wait till that. And so now it is full acceptance of myself, the ability to talk about what I've worked through. And I don't want to reduce it down to the banal profane of saying, you know, I don't give a fuck. No, it's just conformity and moving past that.
Right. You do give a fuck, actually.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And how I want to live my life with a certain richness now.
Sure. Oh, I love that. I think one thing that I don't want to do anymore is wait for the phone to ring. Yeah. Spent a lot of my life waiting. I mean, you know, before the internet, because there's so much freedom in this, us having a conversation, and there's no more wall, so we can actually push this out to the world, our audience community. Before that, if you wanted to do something creative, it was dependent on a lot of executives' yeses or nos, or you're just at the coffee shop with a lot of ideas. And so for half of my life, I was at the coffee shop with a lot of ideas. I wasn't able to execute. I wasn't able to hang my painting on the wall. Today I can, but I still have that residue, that tug from the old that says, okay, what you really want is on the other side of someone's yes or no, right? And so I learned in the last couple of years, with some TV projects and things not working out, and then noticing me spiraling and kind of getting depressed, and like the impact that had on me made me realize, oh, I'm waiting by the phone again. Why am I giving that so much power?
That's what I was just going to say. You're handing your power over to something else.
Yeah. And so that's something I don't want to do anymore, man. I'm 50. I'm done with that. And real quick, this is a great example. If you're not watching this, something that Paul created, we're going to talk about it. This is a great example of not waiting by the phone, right? And so, and which is like the theme and the story behind you making this shame game, this deck of it's more than just cards, but that it went from idea to conception, executed solely by you and tools that's available in the world, and you didn't have to wait for someone to say yes or no, right? And so, like, that's the world we live in, and the thing is that, you know, we all have residue, we all have, you know, parts of our story that still tugs, and so just I know I'm taking the long way home, but no more waiting by the phone to ring.
Yeah.
What's another thing that, and they don't have to be really big things. It could be small things, but what's another thing that you no longer want to do, or you no longer, you're done with?
That waiting by the phone one is the big one.
No, you can't take mine. You got to. Okay. So we have we have the Jason Bourne adventure travels, right?
Yeah, I did that, right?
Conformity. No more waiting by the phone.
Yeah.
Now one more. We'll do a few more.
Wow.
Think about love. Think about what are some non-negotiable, or friendships, or maybe in parenting.
Yeah, the friendships are the ones that the immediate connection is embracing immediate connection and no longer giving into seniority. You know, a good friend is not somebody that you've had for 25 years. And maybe your best friend, and they very well maybe your ride or die. But I've made friendships in the past 18 months that these people are on the first bleacher, first row of my bleacher.
Mm.
And they're there with pennants and foam fingers cheering me on. And it is a authentic connection, and time is irrelevant. And so embracing those connections, like when you hit one,
Yeah.
you don't need to go 7 years to qualify as a best friend. It's like, if there is a connection and it is authentic, is to embrace that. Because
Yeah.
I mean, time, can't really take it for granted anymore. So embracing new friendships is something that has been really profound right now.
I also feel like since we are in what Carl Jung calls the moon part of our life, crossing the great divide from, I would say 50 is a huge, I think for men, 50 is kind of the, what they call the midlife. And I would say a midlife awakening instead of crisis. But a lot of this actually has to do with age. A lot of this has to do with being in a place where you realize life is short. For example, not exchanging truth for membership or conformity, having some non-negotiables. They naturally come as you get older.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, I'm so glad you brought up the Jung thing, because I mean, he refers to the afternoon, where we're at.
The afternoon
is
as opposed to what, the morning?
Yeah, opposed to the morning, and the noon is like, peak life, and now the sun's going down a little bit, but it's not dark. We still,
no, it's not dark.
He's incredibly prolific at this time of his life. And but the one thing that always gives me a North Star to follow is like, this is a part of your life where the stuff that you learned in your teens and 20s no longer serve you.
Yes.
And so when you can look at it like, yeah, of course, I don't want that information. I don't want that. I don't need that database anymore. I need to build a new one. And that's just part of life. It's not forced upon you. It's not a crisis. It's like, God, what an opportunity. Everything's going to be, I can rewrite the book now, instead of self-medicating, making bad decisions, going elsewhere, letting somebody else do the hard work. It's like, oh, wait, this is an opportunity for rebirth.
Yeah.
It's supposed to happen. It's not thrust upon you.
So my last one, you can do one more if you want to, is no more being narrow. I'm at a place in my life. I heard, I don't know who, I think, was it no, who was it? Oh, Mike Tyson. Someone said I just saw on social media that, it was Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy. He said that we only have, I think he said 70 summers.
Yeah.
And it really hit me because I'm 50. So I'm like, okay, maybe 30, maybe I have 30 summers. And I don't know why that landed for me, but I started thinking, shit, time is ticking and life is short. And so I'm done being narrow. And this is across the board with everything. So tracing any kind of blueprints, whether it's how we love, how we move, I'm just done being narrow. So that means I need to be open. And so I'm now just forcing myself to be open to anything and everything, because I want to expand. I'm done constricting. And I think that I should just bring it back to me, but I still have a lot of judgments and a lot of shoulds and how something should look, right? So whether we're talking about friendships, love, relationships, business, like, all the big life pie pieces, I want to really shake that edge of sketch and just be open to everything. And we live in a world today where, technology is exploding. And man, this old poster of how things should be it's dissolving.
That reminds me that, okay, what I'm done with binary thinking.
Right. Binary. Yeah.
Straight or gay, marriage, divorce, rich, poor, and live in the spectrum and know that,
live in the grays,
and quit,
wrong or right.
If there is a solution that works for you that is in the gray, go there and stay there. It's not a cop out. Embrace it. Do everything that you need to do for your internal compass to see whether you're rationalizing or just staying there because it's safe. But it doesn't have to be one or the other. And that really reminded me of I'm done with binary thinking.
And it's not just a mindset. That's half of it. Then it's like, how do you actually live that? How do you execute it? So you pull it out of theory and actually use it to change your life. So if you decide, okay, no more black or white, wrong or right. Like, I want to actually practice living in grays. Ask yourself what that looks like for you. What does that look like for you daily? What does that look like for you when you're showing up with a friend? When you what does that look like in relation? What does that look like in the bedroom? What does that look like having dinner? What does that look like? So like, because I'm really all about street, meaning how do you take concepts and theories and really bring it to street level so you are executing it in your day to day. If not, they may sound good, but they're just in between your ears and nothing changes. So the execution of these things, and ask yourself, what do you no longer willing to do? What doesn't serve you anymore? And then what does it look like to execute that in your life?
And what are you doing because you think you have to do it, or you've been educated up until this point that no, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
not necessarily.
Paul, let's talk about your cards and your creation. Speaking of, people with bras on their heads making things.
One of the things that I was a creative executive, chief creative officer in an esports company. I had a creative agency and everything. And what has become an integral part of my coaching is using metaphor and analogy and meeting the clients halfway. I use a lot of AI in my coaching. For instance, I have a client. He's telling me, I've got this barrier. I just can't get through it. And I'm like, okay, what does it look like? And he's like, it looks like a metal door. And I'm like, okay, how do you blow a metal door? How do you blow a vault in a heist movie? And he's like, well, you put those charges around the doorway, around the door jamb, and then blow them. And while he's telling me this, I'm on Midjourney, which is an AI tool that takes text to image. And I'm asking for a photorealistic image of a vault being blown by successive charges. It comes up, I text it to him, and he's like, holy shit, this is amazing. I'm going to put this on my refrigerator. So
wait, real quick. What's happening, I think, now with AI, because it is controversial, especially when it comes to as a coaching tool. I'm also still building some things with AI. When the internet and webcam first came out, I was a baby therapist, and it was so controversial. And I remember it was a no-no to have a session with someone via webcam. You weren't supposed to do that. It was all about in person. And I remember the board was against it. And when I discovered Google Hangouts and I ran this group with like 6 people, I remember closing my little white MacBook that my mom bought me because I was broke at the time and thinking, holy shit, this is going to change the world. And I remember everyone was against it. And I feel like history is repeating itself with AI because people are terrified and they're like, no. And, especially with coaching, they're like, yeah, but we want the human. And my point is, yes, of course, the human is now more valuable than at any time. And the AI is only a tool, like the webcam was and now is. And, of course, like Zooming and webcamming is now, teletherapy is now kind of the standard, and seeing someone in person is almost a luxury, right? And so I feel like that is happening now with AI.
Yeah, the integration of using that tool, especially with coaches and therapists and healers, is that we know how to ask questions. We know how to dive deep. And so that's the whole foundation of the construct of prompting is writing a prompt for an AI engine, whatever, for a large language model, whatever it is. If you ask the right questions, just don't dump in a transcript of a session and then get a summary back. But if you're able to dive into it, ask it to recognize patterns, ask it to recognize word usage. What other questions can I ask? Okay, using the influences of Carl Jung, Esther Perel, give me John Kim. And then you've got this rich 360 that you can give back to the client in your own words. And it really is an amazing time.
Dude, it blows my mind. I'm just joking about putting myself in the name of I see Mount Rushmore. I shouldn't be on it. But listen, the idea of taking people that you resonate with and putting them into one space where you could pull from their life work is mind blowing.
There is a prompting technique called room full of experts. And so you can assemble a room full of experts of your influencers who you have crafted your practice around.
Right.
And confer. And it's amazing.
I mean, it's like basically you're creating a playlist.
Yes, you're creating a playlist. You're a filter to run your stuff through. And then there, your clients are getting your flavor. That's where your unique quality is coming through, because you're pulling from why they came to you, the influences that made you the coach and the therapist that you are. So yeah, I mean, it is it's once again, not sticking in the binary. It's not good or bad.
Yeah.
It's how you use this tool. Yeah. Fire can burn, fire can heat. You know, it's that kind of thing.
So you made these cards?
I made these cards. So anyways, I created Shame the Game, and it is made up of 28 cards, 12 cards that represent shame, 8 cards that represent the triggers for shame, and then 8 cards that represent your essence. And sexual shame, financial shame, generational, racial, and then the triggers.
Look how beautiful these are. By the way, these Paul's an artist, but these are also generated with AI.
Yes. And so the prompting around that was to keep them all consistent and beautiful, and then I modified them accordingly. So yeah, and so these can be used as journaling tools. These can be used with your therapist or your coach as you go through them, and you're like, oh, the mountain of self-doubt. That's a card there. What does that mean to you? So there are multiple ways that you can do this, and then if you are doing it by yourself, there's instructions in there of putting together a matrix, like 1 worth card, 2 shame cards, and an activation card. And then there's a mobile app where you can put that in. And then this room full of experts will give you a reading.
Yeah.
It is for entertainment purposes only. It is not therapy, but it'll give you a reading around this structure of these cards. And I found in using it with clients, it's so much easier to talk about your shame in the form of like the hero's journey, a narrative, a story, instead of just, boom, these are the facts. If you get somebody imagining a world where they're the breaker of chains, or they're the adaptive warrior that is going to go up against their shame, it all cracks open. It's really cool.
It's an intervention. And what I love about this isn't just the product. It's so professional. I could see this at any store. But I love that this was in Paul's brain. And he executed, and now you could actually hold them, and you can pull cards, and you could get on the app, and you could find out what they mean. All like from idea to conception is, I think, one of the reasons why we're on this planet. So like the representation, you know, and listen, it's also with a book, or it's also with anything else you're creating. So the birth of an idea to me is one of the most powerful joys of life. Just the birth, when you have an idea, that 5 seconds before fear kicks in like tear gas, and you're just like, oh, I had this idea, right? To me, that's pure nectar. And then there's a journey in creating, because there's going to be barriers and self-doubt and all of that. But when you actually are able to hold it in your hand, you know, this is the moment when the book, before it hits the audience, comes to my door and I could hold it and I flip through it. Well, congratulations on going through the journey and executing an idea that you had, because that, I think, that's why we're here.
Thanks, man. I mean, and thank you for being a part of this process, because it was that's, you know, it's been a while since I have done something solely creative, solely for myself, solely from inside, not for a client, not for any event. And it was the first time, and it was scary again. Yeah. But it was so wonderful to be in flow state. And if you had told me 3 years ago that you're going to create a deck of cards around shame, I wouldn't have believed it. So it was listening to what I wanted to do and what I would have wanted somebody to hand me in an office to talk about my stuff.
Yeah. So this is also a great example of no more waiting by the phone. Ask yourself, whether you're watching this or listening to this, what do you want to do that is scaring you, or that you're putting pause on, or you're waiting for the phone to ring, or someone else's yes or no? What do you want to do, because there is a fire in your belly, but you've been, you know, turning it down into a pilot light? What is it that you want to do, and what's on the other side of that? Because it's less about the product and more about the inner change from you coming out the other side and giving yourself that experience.
And somebody will be there to receive it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, now you can bring these cards to our retreats, you know, and we can do them in a circle. Where can we find these cards and you?
shamethegame.com
Mm-hmm.
and Smart Funny Tortured.
Yep.
You can find that as well. And then also all the stuff that I'm talking about on AI. So AI, Shame, Smart Funny Tortured, it's all in one place. smartfunnytortured.com or go to shamethegame.com.
Thank you for listening. Be well.
Oh my God, that was huge, man. Thank you so much.